Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing well today. So in this video, I'm going to do a response to a Rudy Rant video over at Alpha Investments. And this one was titled 9 billion Pokemon cards. So before jumping into the video, if you guys can do me a favor, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel to support me, I'd really appreciate that. You can also join my Patreon. With Dan from Catch 'em All Collectibles. We do monthly market analysis, live interactive Zoom calls with people talking about the Pokemon market, and to a lesser extent, other TCG and CCG and collectible card markets. And then you also get access to the Discord with, we have about 260, 270 or so patrons these days. Lots of just ongoing conversations, people sharing useful info, useful data. It's $10 a month and you get all of that. You also get all of our backlog, all of our old videos and content where we do deep dive presentations, hour-long presentations, Dan and I, and we also bring people like Rusty TCA Gaming, and Pat Flynn has been on, and we'll bring other people like that on in the future from the Pokemon community to continue to give real deep dive number presentations to sort of help you better understand the Pokemon market and make better, collecting or speculating decisions. All right, so let's jump into the video.
Folks, welcome back. Did you hear? What is it, boy? What is it? What is it? Did you hear? The Pokemon, there's an article. They printed like 9 printed 9 billion Pokemon cards to bring the market back down and print it to oblivion. I mean, Rudy, you're sitting on 69,420 boxes of Chilling Reign. Aren't you worried? So let me do this trick. The booster pack has 15 cards, and there's a rare in it. That means 1 out of 15. Was one divided by 15 was that 6, 7%, 8%, 7%. Let's round it up. So
I mean, the first thing to say, and I'm going to do a bunch of math in this video to really try to illustrate, does these 9 billion Pokemon cards actually matter? But there are 10 cards in each pack. Rudy's using a 15 card. It doesn't really matter. To be honest, Rudy's sort of numbers in this video that he's throwing out there are really just sort of like random numbers. The whole video is sort of kind of a joke, I think. But I think it's, I don't think everyone takes this as a joke. I do think people listen to Rudy and take this stuff like very seriously, and like what he's saying really, really matters. So I am going to do like a serious response to this, and a serious response to, does 9 billion Pokemon cards actually matter? But the first point he makes here, where he starts throwing out numbers, is it's important that there are 10 cards in each pack and not 15 cards in each pack when we're doing a lot of these math equations that we're about to do in this video, because it dramatically changes the numbers to be, a whole third off.
7% of all cards in a 15-card booster pack, if there's one rare, let's keep basic math, let's just keep it simple, have value, or some sort of rare value. So that immediately tells me 93% of the cards are essentially going to be common, uncommon, bulk in Pokemon. I know some packs have 2 holos or reverse, but I'm keeping it simple. So I don't have a calculator in front of me, and, my hair is ridiculous, and, I just ate a party pack, and, but if 93% of all of the 9 billion Pokemon cards printed are bulk, does that fucking matter? Have you noticed Wizards is making the product smaller and printing less bulk? Essentially taking a raw number.
So he seems to be starting this video by implying that anyone who thinks that it matters, this is sort of what I get from the start, is that he's going to try to argue, or basically say, at least at this point, rants can go in a few different directions, but that 9 billion Pokemon cards, it doesn't matter that they're printing this much, even though it's up, before all of this boom time, they were printing maybe about 1 billion, according to things I've read, 1 billion a year, which went up to about 3 billion a year, and now is 9 billion a year, or 9 billion over the last year from March, 2021 to March 2022 is the specific data that was shared with us. He's going to say that it doesn't matter that they've tripled or 9x printing, because the the vast majority of cards are bulk. They don't have any value anyway. They'll never have any value. And just because they've increased printing this much doesn't mean that the high end cards, or he says 7% here. In this video, I'm going to use one. I'm just going to take the top. Even we could even take the top 1% of 1% to try to illustrate still how many cards that is. But I'm going to show a little bit like what really is that 7%, what really is that 3% of 9 billion, because it is quite a lot. And then I'm going to compare that to the amount of vintage cards that have been graded so far, and the amount of vintage cards that have been like bought and sold, and what the numbers sort of look like there when we talk about like the mint vintage cards versus like the mint modern cards that have been printed, comparing sort of the best of modern to sort of the best of the best, or hollows and above of vintage WotC hollow first editions. So he's sort of setting this up, saying people who think that 9 billion is a big number are just being ridiculous. They're overreacting. They're being silly, in classic sort of Rudy, very charismatic style here.
Out of context is really stupid. It's really dumb.
So this point I do agree with. Anytime people throw out numbers without context and without really saying what it means, it can be really stupid and really dumb. We see that all the time. People can throw out but people throw out lots of data that is incomplete to prove, or without context to sort of prove their bias or prove their point all of the time. I would argue Rudy is doing that a little bit in this video, actually, funny enough, but ironically, but I do agree with this point 100%. And Rudy does do a bit of a mathematical ranty dive here beyond what you might see someone else do, who's just like, oh my God, 9 billion, like a huge number, the world's ending, without actually figuring out what does that really mean, and how much more supply is there really of the cards that actually matter, the cards that people are actually speculating in, the cards that if you're a sealed, speculator investor, might matter because they might have something to do with the value of the box, the key cards in the set in the long run.
Typical internet, social media, dramatic headlines, and skews it to make people go, whoa! I gotta share that link. Clicks, views, retweets, thumbs up. Holy crap. Your promoted listing on Silk Road, get pushed to the top so everybody sees your listing. When I see a raw thing like that, I mean, okay. So let's say the last 2 years, last 18 months, they bought Millennium Print Group and increased print runs. And let's say they printed an extra 50 to 100,000 boxes. So let's just say 100,000, make even numbers. Let's say they print 100,000 extra boxes of battle styles, 100,000 extra boxes of Chilling Reign, 100,000 boxes of Evolving Skies, 100,000 boxes, Brilliant Stars, 100,000 boxes, Astral Radiance. And these are just the reprint waves too. So let's assume the first time around, there was another 100,000. So let's see, Battle, Chilling, Evolving, Brilliant, Astral. Let's not even go into the Pokemon Go, specialty stuff, Champions Path, Anniversary, and those stuff. Just basic, 5 sets. Let's pretend it's 100,000 boxes each, which worldwide, it's probably more than that. So that's 500,000 boxes for 5 sets. Let's say they double tapped it and said, hit them again, another 500,000. That's 1 million boxes. 1 million boxes. Let's say each booster box is 36 packs. 36 million packs. What's 36 million packs times 15 cards per pack?
Again, should be 10, but it doesn't, it really doesn't matter because all of these numbers I don't really know why. He's kind of throwing out a bunch of random numbers here.
A calculator? Let me get a calculator. 36 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 zeros, times 15 cards per pack. How many zeros is that? Let's see here. That'd be 500 million? 540. Is that 540 million?
So I think a better way to do this is to actually work back from the 9 billion number, because the 9 billion number, Rudy's kind of throwing out random print run estimates like 100,000 or 200,000, or if they did a reprint, let's say they do another 100,000. I think it's better to work back for a second from the number we actually know that Pokemon has given us, which is that 9 billion number. So I'm just going to take one moment here to to pull up some, let's see. I don't think you can see that. Hopefully you can still see Rudy's face. But I'm going to take a second here to pull up some numbers for you. So if we're thinking that there are 9 billion cards, right? And there are 10 cards per pack, let's say, okay? That's that. Let's not just say that is what it is. That would be, now this doesn't include all the promos, all the, I don't know if they include jumbo cards in that. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know if they're including like code cards. Like I'm not sure exactly what that is, but just for simplicity's sake, just like Rudy said in his video, for simplicity's sake, we're going to stick with this number of 900 million packs. So that's 1/10 of 9 billion. So we have 900 million packs that were printed. Okay, let's say. Now let's say that let's take 1 out of every 100 packs, you're going to hit some sort of really, really good card, some sort of card that people are probably grading right now. So that it's about 1 in 100 to pull alt arts, roughly. So that would include all the alt arts, but some of the alt arts aren't that great. Maybe a good rainbow rare or a secret rare could take the place. I think 1 out of 100 is a pretty fair number. And in fact, obviously people are grading and are valuing many more cards than this 1 out of 100 suggests in terms of actually that people feel are valuable enough to get graded, or people are paying more than, $10, $20, $30 for sure. But let's just take the 1 in 100 number because it's just easiest to work with and it's conservative. So 1 in 100, so we have 900 million packs. So 1 in 100 would be 9 million chase cards. Okay. So if we have 9 million of and these are the best of the best. This is like better than the top 1%. These is probably, these are the prime chase cards and this is just 1 year of Pokemon. This isn't a 5-year period. And 5 year, if they kept printing this much, you'd have to multiply that by 5. We'd be talking 45 million chase cards. Okay. So we have 9 million chase cards, and that might seem like a really big number. That might seem like a really small number. We don't really know, which is going to be part of the point of this video, is that too many? And we can talk about, demand, which is the other really important side, but just to lay the supply framework here. So 9 million of these types of chase cards, of these types of 1 in 100 pack chase cards. Okay. All right. Now I do want to compare it a little bit to vintage. Now we don't know how much vintage was printed, just for some numerical comparison or sense. But what we can do is we can look at pop reports and we can see how much vintage has already been graded, which will give us some sense, if we look at the 9s of 10 and 10s, of the amount of vintage that has survived in 9 or 10 condition. And we're just talking about, I'm just comparing it right now to first edition WotC Hollows. And I took the first 6 sets of first edition WotC Hollows because that's how many sets are roughly in a year in Pokemon. And we're talking about, this is 1 year of data. So we're going to compare, 6 sets, 6 of those modern sets to 6, vintage sets. We're going to take the first 6 sets. So in those first 6 sets, there are 13,000 hollow first edition cards that have graded roughly about 13,000 that have graded a 10. Okay, so we've got 13,000 that are 10s, and we've got about 32 to 35,000 roughly. And again, in Patreon, I go through these numbers exactly, and I show you exactly what each set, and we compare each set to each set. That's sort of what the Patreon does, is these deep dive in analytics. But we've got about 32 to 35,000 PSA 9s. Okay, so 13,000 PSA 10s, about 32,000 or so PSA 9s. Okay. So now let's go back to that 9 million chase card number, which is just the best of the best. This does not include your lesser rainbow rares, your lesser secret rares. It doesn't include your full arts, sort of lesser full arts for sure. It doesn't include your V cards, and certainly doesn't include hollows and reverse hollows, which we're also seeing graded right now. Okay. But so we've got 9 million chase cards. So let's say that and this is where we get into rampant speculation, right? And there's just no way other than to rampantly speculate. But let's try to use like conservative numbers and maybe we can agree upon. So let's say of these 9 million chase cards, how much do we think have been opened so far? Of this year, of that year that they're talking about. Let's say maybe 10%, 20% have been opened. We think maybe 10% of them have been opened. The vast majority of it is still sealed. And it might be more like 40, 60, it might be 50, 50. I would have a hard time believing it's more than that, but a lot of it's probably been opened already. Okay. So the reason why, and I didn't include sort of pop reports of modern cards, is because the pop reports of the modern cards are going to absolutely explode and balloon because the prices at PSA have been too high for people to send these cards out for the most part. Okay. So it's much better to look at like the raw card and how many actual cards do we think will exist in perfect grade. But let's say that, 10, 20 years from now, most of it is opened. The sealed product maybe has gone up in value, which means that the rest of it can't be open anymore, or it's going to slow down in the amount that it's opened. Maybe 60% of it get open, 70%, 80%. No one really knows. Okay. But we're going to take that $9 million chase card number. And then we're going to say, let's say that all of it opened. Let's use that first time, which isn't going to happen. But if all of it was opened, let's say, and then 10% of that, let's say was graded. Okay. And then 50% of that got a 10. All right. Again, speculation, but I think fairly conservative to say that only 10% of these cards will ever get graded over the next 10 to 20 years. If the prices are really remain really high and warrant the grading for people who want to like speculate or invest in this sort of stuff. We're talking 900,000 we're talking 900,000 graded 9s and 10s, maybe with an even split of 450 and 450. Obviously for some cards, there's going to be more 10s than 9s is what we're seeing. For some, it's going to be less. There's going to be less 10s to 9s. Either way, we're talking about 450,000, something like that. Okay. And that's only if 10%, of that total are graded. Now, how many do we think in the world and again, we're just sort of rampantly speculating here, but how many of the vintage do you think is left in the world? Do you think only 10% of mint 9s and 10s have been graded so far of first edition WotC? It would be surprising if only 10% of the total supply in the world has been graded. Now, we're not including all of the attrition, right? All of the cards that have been damaged, opened, improperly stored, whatever. Those can never be 9s and 10s. We're just talking about cards out there that could be 9s and 10s. Probably we have a much higher percentage of these already graded, and already we're at 50,000 in the vintage number. If we add the 9s and 10s, and we're at 450,000 on the modern chase cards. Okay. And on the vintage stuff, we're just including all of the regular hollows. So we're not being nearly as for lack of a better word, we're not being nearly as hard on the vintage stuff as we're being on the modern stuff, where we're just taking the top cards. We're kind of taking all of the hollows, even the lesser hollows. If we just included your top 3, 4, 5 hollows, that would greatly reduce the number of graded 9s and 10s, of course. Okay. I just want to illustrate that by saying we're still talking about 450,000, very realistic in my opinion, given speculation, and it could be higher. 450,000 graded 10 chase cards from 1 year of ultra modern. Okay. Now that's a lot. And if you actually compare it to the current pop reports, we've got a long way to go to reach something like that, which I think it's very speculative, but that might be a fairly conservative speculation of taking, the top 1%, of sort of your packs, your pack hits, and grading that would be 450,000 cards using all of that math. If only 10% was opened, okay, and then it was all graded. Okay. And that's a big if, right? Because what percentage is actually going to be graded? And so we can move these numbers around to make different points. But if we think that that 10% is going to be opened and only 10% is going to get graded and only 50% of those will be 10s, then we start getting from, okay, so we've got 9 million chase cards, only 10% open, 900,000, only 10% of that graded, 90,000, only 10% of the, or only 50% of that equals 10s. That's only, now we're down to 45,000, which is about the same number of as the vintage. So a lot of this will depend on the amount, the percentage that gets open and the percentage that gets graded. I think it's extremely unlikely, though, that if prices really go high on these, as speculators and investors are hoping, and they're already very high. I mean, when we're talking about $600 PSA 10 cards, $400, $300 PSA 10 cards, right? I think it's very unlikely that only 10% of all of the product ever gets open. That's impossible. That's not going to happen. We're probably way over that anyway. But that also only 10% of the total mint supply, because it's all going to come out probably the vast majority in 9 and 10 condition, that only 10% of that will be graded. All right. So hopefully that's very clear for people. And that's what it would take for the numbers to equal in terms of supply, even though these cards that we're talking about are so much harder to pull, because we're talking about holos that are 1 in every 3 packs versus a hit card that's 1 in every 100 packs. But even factoring that difference in pull rate, because of the huge amount of Pokemon cards that have been printed, given the numbers that they gave during that year, and the attrition rate of this older vintage stuff, where probably only ever 1% or probably like 0.5% of the total cards that were printed are still in 9 and 10 condition, or graded 9 and 10 condition, probably from a lot of these sets. That's where I still believe, despite the difficulty to pull some of these Ultra Arts and Rainbow Rares and Secret Rares, that there's still going to be a lot more supply. Okay. Now, how much, again, is going to greatly, if we used very, very sort of negative to modern numbers, and we say that 80% is going to be opened, and then we say that of that, 50% of it's going to be graded, we're talking about very large, like, a million plus cards of these could be graded. Okay. 1 million from 1 year of hits. All right. Now, that's not going to happen, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be that high. I honestly don't think the prices are going to go up very much on this. I think we're going to see retraces on a lot of these prices, which is going to make people not want to grade them as much. We have lots of binder collectors. When people stop stonking as much, there's going to be more people who stop grading and just collecting binders as these cards become less expensive. Maybe sometime in the future they'll go up and people start grading again. But I see it taking a really long time to reach those types of numbers. Okay, so I just went on a really long rambly rant. I think it's very useful data, very useful to understand, and you can play around with those numbers yourselves, because as we said, it's all speculative. So you can decide what percentage you think is going to get open and what percentage you think is going to get graded, and then play around with those numbers to try and make your own sort of speculative decisions. I'm going to give the floor back to Rudy, but I think that's a much better way of using that $9 billion card amount and then trying to break that down into actual usable numbers. And to Rudy's point, with full context of what it actually means. All right. All right, Rudy, take it away.
It's 540 million. So it's $500 million. So right there, that's $500 million. Well, Rudy, they said like 9 billion. Are you fucking stupid? Well, I am stupid. Okay, so now let's go to supplemental products. All those fancy plastic, I just drooled on myself. Did you guys see that? Somebody give me a meme of me drooling on myself. So all these other fancy packaging, tins, box sets, little backpacks and fun things, and individual sleeve boosters and all the supplemental stuff, you're easily already at a billion. And that's just those basic things. I didn't even go into all the actual, like, Pokemon Go, the Champion's Path, the anniversary products, all these other product lines. Oh, the McDonald's, was it 150 Pokemon packs per McDonald's case for that Pokemon anniversary? There's so many So when you hear a raw number.
So I think what he's trying to do here is he's trying to say he wasn't really that successful in doing it because he only got to 1 billion and he didn't really like explain like how many ETBs he thinks, quite a few less packs, and he's using a 15 card amount, which greatly increases. So his booster box numbers that he gave in this video, how many he thinks might have been printed, are probably extremely low by his own calculations because he only got to 1 billion out of 9 billion. And he's saying half of it's from ETBs, which it might, maybe more than half. You know, I really have no idea. You know, I'm not sure anyone does. You know, that, or at least anyone that has a YouTube channel and is talking about it publicly and isn't super, you know, hush hush, you know, on those print numbers and the distribution numbers. But why Rudy does this is Rudy is big on investing and speculating on sealed booster boxes. And so the underlying message here is that, yes, 9 billion is a big amount, but that doesn't mean that many booster boxes were printed. It's only a few 100,000 maybe, or, you know, this or that. And actually, if you do the math, even in his own video, he only got to 1 billion, and we're not including the ETBs. I really have no idea how many booster boxes were printed. It's just that's part of why it's so, when you're speculating on booster boxes, you're just sort of taking that extra gamble or risk because we just really don't know how many more of those were printed than in the past. We would think, all things being equal, right, guys, that it's 3 times the amount of the previous year and 9 times the amount of the year before that, because Pokemon is, you know, if the print estimates are right, that it used to be 1 billion a year, then it went to 3 billion, and now it's 9 billion. But it may not be, because maybe they printed a lot less booster boxes and they printed more ETBs during this time period to get it out onto Walmart. That's very plausible. Maybe the amount of booster boxes isn't even that much higher. And so the booster boxes are actually going to be a relatively, you know, rarer item that goes up in value and has some more, you know, appeal. Now, I think some sets, probably more booster boxes were printed. Some sets, maybe more ETBs were printed. Some sets obviously only had ETBs. So we just don't know. And then you have like really specialty products like UPCs, you know, for celebrations. Maybe there's, you know, just because there's 9 billion Pokemon cards printed, does that really matter for the UPCs if there weren't that many UPCs printed for sealed collectors of UPCs? No, there might not be that many of those metal. So in that sense, I agree with Rudy that you like that number, you want to try to make sense of that number and bring it down to something more usable, more useful than just some big scary number that doesn't really mean anything. But I'm not sure that Rudy was successful to make me feel really comfortable or confident that like booster boxes somehow were not triple printed compared to what they were in the past. I really don't know.
Can't extrapolate that and just turn around and say, proof. Rudy's Pokemon bathroom of XY is going to 0. Rudy's mustache. You can't do that dumb shit. People love to take things out of context and make it dramatic, get the views and clicks, but in reality, 9 billion cards? So what? 93% of that is bulk garbage. Again, we all do. First of all, let's step back further. Let's zoom out of the planet and look.
And if we were taking his 93% number, you know, that's like, I took, you know, like 1% of what, 10%, right? So I took, you know, 1/10 of 1%. I took even less than that because it's 1 in 100 packs and just 1 card in that pack, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's saying if you took like 7% of 9 billion is massive. That's something like what? 3%, 270, like, yeah, I mean, we're talking about 270 million, talking about 700 million-ish, right? 600 million-ish, something like that. Massive. That's a massive amount of cards. Like that's way more than we're used to in the Pokemon market, as being like chase cards that have like real value. Now he's using rares. You know, he's 7% is way too much. There 7% of cards that you're pulling from these packs are not valuable or have any sort of value or have some sort of any speculative investment. And no one's claiming that.
Earth. We all understand that 99, probably 99.9% of every Pokemon Magic the Gathering, hell, Flesh and Blood, may the zoo of meta be with you. People understand 99% of every trading card ever printed in the sports card world, in the CCG world, in the comic book world, 99% of everything printed has no value.
So here he's agreeing. And in fact, when he said 99.9%, that was getting at more of the equation that I did in this video. But even at that 99.9%, when you have 9 billion, it's still a lot more than we're used to. That's what I was trying to show.
Suddenly, it's none of that matters because we're taking things out of context. 99% of Magic cards since Alpha was printed are essentially worthless. Well, maybe I wouldn't say worthless because, I mean, it depends, maybe under $1 or worth less than a quarter. It depends what metric you want to use. A lot of people say it's under $3. You can't sell it online because of fees of shipping, so that's worthless bulk. Well, let's just say under 50 cents or something. You see what I'm saying? It's always been that way. And it's supposed to be that way. When again, we've talked about this. When the market stops complaining that your product is expensive and I can't get the boxes, the scalpers are making things too expensive. When that goes away, you fucked up. It is that moment. He knew.
I apologize for Rudy's swearing in this video. It's Rudy. It's what he does.
He had fucked up. When people stop complaining, when people stop saying Rudy's pumping the reserve list, when people stop saying that guy's screwing up, that guy's scalping, when everybody stops complaining, it is that moment. He knew he had fucked up. You understand what I'm saying? That's how the world works. When the Timmies bond together and form Optimus Prime, adult vibrating Timmy, when they all stick together and they are angry, yelling, print more, it's a ripoff, investors are when they all go away and no one's complaining anymore, and then you can hear a pin drop, it is that moment. That company fucked up. And to rebuild that is going to be 10 times more difficult. Because everything in life, when you move up, especially as a creepy investor Timmy empire, when you move up in life, you move up by little staircases, little steps. When you fuck up, you fall like an elevator to the ground. So it takes a long time to climb, and it takes a simple misstep to land upside down on a giant vibrating pit for Mortal Kombat. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, looking at a dramatic headline number that's designed.
So the irony of this video, right, is that like Rudy was saying that people use dramatic-y titles and dramatic stuff, and now Rudy has used a dramatic title and is being like very dramatic in the video. So he's kind of complaining about people being dramatic while also being dramatic. Now, I love Rudy. I love that he's dramatic and really enjoy the drama of his channel and enjoy his like ridiculousness and what he's been able to do in the card world and all sorts of things. Like dude's freaking awesome. And I think he just like loves his stuff and super passionate, as well as just being like crazy passionate about like money and markets. And so am I. So I don't hold it over him, but I am going to tease him a little bit and say, it is a little ironic that like at funny, you know, often when we're complaining about other people being very dramatic, we're being very dramatic.
It make you go, oh my God. Oh. The only person and the only benefit to your life is somebody made a third of a penny on getting an AdWords click or something on that article. The reality is people take things out of context. They make them more dramatic than what they are. And most cards have always been worthless. Printing 9 billion to bring all the prices of Pokemon down, that doesn't mean anything. Because Pokemon is literally probably the biggest IP brand in the world. Like maybe next to Nintendo or Mario, people recognize the Pokemon name in a Pikachu, almost the entire planet Earth.
So here's where we're getting to like what I think is like the useful part of the argument here, which is the demand part of the argument. So the argument in my view, okay, should not be that Pokemon potentially tripling or 9xing the print run, not of the 99.9% of stuff that's valueless that no one cares about, but them 9xing the print run of the 0.01, whatever percent we want to put, but 9xing it will have a negative impact on prices and make it more difficult for things to appreciate, because now you need 9 times the amount of demand as before. You need 3 times the amount of demand as before in order for it to see the same type of growth or the same type of movement. That would be, now markets don't actually work that way and don't actually function that way in such perfect mathematical ways. It's a lot more, particularly in illiquid, unoptimized markets like this. But it's so important. And anyone who comes onto YouTube, in my opinion, who is talking all about supply or all about demand and says there's so much supply and so all this stuff will 100% be worthless. So say there's so much demand that like you could print this forever and it wouldn't never matter, is just fundamentally ignoring the reality of the laws of supply and demand, and that it's an equation, and that both they're the same, they're equally as important. Now sometimes the demand numbers are the ones that are exploding and the ones that are important to focus on and are the ones that are dictating the market. Sometimes supply and rarity numbers are going to be the ones that are more, but it's always the relationship between the two that creates price, that creates a value. Okay, so now I do 100% agree with Rudy here, which is where I think the bullish argument can be made, which is that even though it does matter, and you need to be careful, in my opinion, and realize that returns probably will potentially be hurt by the huge increase in print runs, the demand may be able to even outpace that or continue to follow along with it enough that these booster boxes, sealed booster boxes, that these chase cards, they may be able to retain value or not at least crash completely, become bulk. I certainly don't think that will happen anytime soon. That would be, awful. Or even maybe trickle up or go up a little bit. It's possible, but people have to understand that you need that much more demand than was needed in the vintage market to see the same types of percentages, the same types of growth. Okay. Now, a lot of this modern stuff, you're starting from a much cheaper price point than some of these vintage cards. Okay. So in that sense, there are modern cards that I think are better valued than vintage cards. There are modern cards that I think it would make more sense to speculate on than vintage cards. Some vintage cards that I think are way overblown, their trophy cards I think are way overblown, way overvalued, right? So this is not a vintage versus modern argument that all modern bad, all vintage good. It's really, at the end of the day, it's all about price point, but you have there's a lot of misunderstanding about the rarity of the actual rarity of these alt arts and the actual rarity of probably these booster boxes. And I think some people are not really taking in the potential risk there. Okay. But that being said, it doesn't mean you have to overreact. It doesn't mean that this stuff is worthless or has to go to zero. And it doesn't mean that it all floods the market or gets graded all at once. And maybe Pokemon continues to grow enough, to Rudy's point here, it's the biggest IP in the world. Maybe it just continues to grow enough with multiple generations that in 10 years from now, they're printing 18 billion cards a year or something. And we look back on 9 billion and it wasn't even that much. Now, relative to where we were a few years ago, 9 billion is 9 times probably the amount they're printing. But maybe 9 billion is the right amount and is a sustainable demand amount. But maybe demand goes down, guys, right? Maybe demand goes down over the next few years, and we find out that 9 billion, particularly when these sets become less popular, go out of rotation, people are more bored with them. Maybe we find that there's so much of this printed now, and it's out of favor, and too much of it was kept sealed, and it hurts the prices. All of those are possible outcomes, in my opinion. It's way too speculative, in my opinion, to have a sense. And so really what you're doing is you're gambling to some extent, and it's fun, and it should be treated like that, in my opinion. But it's not, it's not something that I think is like super safe and super known what is going to happen with all of these unknown variables that I demonstrated some of in the video. And also hopefully I demonstrated how if you change one variable, the math on one variable here or there, because due to your speculation, you can dramatically change your outcome. And that is risk in and of itself, because we don't have a lot of like really firm data points to base our investment or speculating decisions on.
Now, I think when I go under in my basement and I have dinosaurs and the fish in my fish tank are like, bloop, 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 hey, Pikachu, bloop, 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 Pikachu, bloop, bloop. Like everybody knows that. So again, I'm ending the video, I'm done ranting. I've been ranting all day. Just because there's a high raw number means nothing. Means nothing. Open a box of Magic. 36 packs, 15 cards a pack. How many of those cards have value? 10 cards? 20 cards? So what, the other 97%? Guess what? Worthless bulk. So some raw number is supposed to make people realize that these things aren't scarce and they're all zero? Then don't buy it. If you think it's all manipulated garbage, if it's all overpriced, if you don't enjoy any of it.
Again, it's funny, like the level of like, right, extremeness. Like you either have to think it's like completely manipulated garbage or think that them 9xing the print run doesn't matter and won't hurt the prices at all. Very false dichotomy, right? Like you can both, I think, be reasonable and think that it makes it more likely that these things will not go up in value and will make it more difficult and puts more risk on the prices and more downward pressure, while also people love this stuff. We want the market to thrive, and the vast majority of us hope that this is just the new number that Pokemon is going to print, and this is just the demand, and we're just in a thriving hobby that's going to be able to eat up this demand. Only time will tell, in my opinion. So I think I am going to end it there. Thank you to Rudy. Again, big fan of Rudy. He cracks me up, and I was teasing him a bit in this, but I also think Rudy doesn't take himself too seriously in some of these videos. I think he's having fun too. So hopefully people out there also, have fun with this stuff. Enjoy. I know I enjoy the rants and the rambles. And if you appreciate this type of video, if you can subscribe to my channel, share the video, help me out here. That would be greatly appreciated. And also on the Patreon, we do a lot more deep dives like this, and try to get some actionable, stuff for you, so you can have a better sense of the market that you're trying to operate in. All right, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And hope everyone has a good rest of their day. Take care.